Hello and welcome to the City of London, a city within a city. People think about London as the great metropolis that we all know, but within it is something called the City of London. It goes back many, many hundreds of years, and it's the epicenter of the global financial system, if the truth be told. It's more than that, however. It is the center of a global web of secret societies that control the planet today, and they come from a series of interbreeding bloodlines which you can trace back to the ancient Middle and Near East thousands and thousands of years ago. And the staggering truth is that these interbreeding bloodlines under different names have increasingly controlled planet Earth from that time to this, never more so than today. In the next few hours on this video, you're going to be introduced, if you've not already read the book, my book, The Biggest Secret, to some staggering, stunning, and I'm the first to say, bizarre information. The basis of the video is an interview with a lady called Arizona Wilder, who was brought up and mind-controlled from almost the time that she was born to eventually, as she did, conduct satanic rituals at the highest level of the satanic ritual network, involving some of the most famous people on the planet. But we'll get into that as we go along. It is bizarre, and that's not even the most bizarre aspect of this story, which I'll come to as we progress. But the bizarre just happens to be true. And this video is designed to be a companion to my book, The Biggest Secret, and you'd get more out of the interview with Arizona if you've read that book. But what I'm going to do to start with is just set up a few basic background details that can allow you, if you've not read the book, to follow the story and the revelations that Arizona is going to unfold for us. As I say, this is not just a City of London financial district. It is the center of a global web. It is the spider in the center of the web, as I expose in great detail in The Biggest Secret and a previous book, And the Truth Shall Set You Free. And what the basis of that shows is that all these apparently different companies, banks, insurance companies, political parties, actually at the top of their pyramids interlock and are controlled by the same few people. About 13 families run the world, and offshoots of these bloodlines under different names. Just give you an example and a little guided tour of where we actually are, because that's a good example of what I'm talking about. Behind me is the Bank of England. This was created in a charter signed by William of Orange, who became William III, the King of England, in 1688, 1689, and he was one of these bloodlines. And from the moment that he took the throne, then the whole thing started to really epicenter in London. This is when the spider at the center of the web really moved in here. So we've got the Bank of England behind me, which was created thanks to William of Orange and the people that controlled him, because these guys are just puppets, of course. Over there we've got the NatWest building. It's one of the big clearing banks in England. If you just come around this statue, which I'll come to in a second, behind me there is the Mansion House. That's the center of government in the City of London, this city within a city. And at the top you'll see the red cross on the white background, the flag. It's the flag of England, and that symbol goes back right into the ancient world. It was the ancient sun symbol of the Phoenicians back in the ancient Middle and Near East, and the Phoenicians had a number of deities. One of them was called Barati, the female. One was called Barat, the male. Barati and Barat became Britannia and Britain because the British culture was brought here by the Phoenicians about 3000 BC and after. And also they had deities, the Phoenicians, called St. George of Cappadocia, who killed the dragon. That became St. George of England, and that's, of course, the flag of St. George, the red cross on the white background today. Also, the Christian deity called St. Michael was an ancient Phoenician deity long before Christianity. So the mansion house, the center of government, is a very, very powerful place. We go around here, we've got the Royal and Son Alliance insurance company. The banks and the insurance companies interlock, and as a result of the fantastic amount of wealth that they can move around the financial markets every day, these interlocking organizations control the world financial system. If a stock market goes down and crashes, it's because it's meant to crash. And not everyone loses, you know, when that happens. If you know it's going to crash, you sell your stock, it crashes, you buy it back at a lower price, you then push it back up again and buy other stock at the same time at a few cents on the dollar or whatever. And that means that a financial crash can actually lead, if you know it's coming because you're creating it, to an amazing expansion of your holdings and your wealth. Over there we've got the Lloyd's Bank building. That's another one of the big clearing banks which all interlock and are controlled by the same people. And then there we have the Royal Guardian Exchange building, another major insurance company which, like I say, interlock with all the others. And then we come back to the Bank of England. Now, this financial center, along with places like Wall Street, where the bloodline families interlock again, the same people run America as run Britain, as run Germany, etc. They have funded many, many times both sides in wars. And ironically and sickeningly, behind me, opposite the Bank of England, in the center of this square, is a memorial to those who died in the 2 world wars. Let's just go and have a look at that. What happens in terms of creating wars is a technique, a mind manipulation technique that I called in my books problem, reaction, solution. And it works like this. If you want to introduce something, say centralization of power through the United Nations, centralization of power militarily with NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the biggest military organization in the world that's expanding all the time. If you want to centralize power into fewer and fewer hands, if you did that openly and said this is what we want to do, there'd be a reaction against that. People would say, hey, this is a fascist state you want to create. We're not having this. But through this technique of problem, reaction, solution, you can actually manipulate people to demand you do what you want to do anyway. So it works like this. First of all, you create the problem, but you get someone else to be blamed for it. You then report that problem through the media in the way you want it reported, because the media is owned by the same people that own the banks and etc. You get the public to react to your problem by saying something must be done, this can't go on, what are they going to do about it? And at that point, they, who have covertly created the problem and blame someone else, who've gleaned that reaction of do something, then offer the solution to the problems they have created. So if you take the world wars, after the First World War, in which the financial centers of London and Wall Street, etc., funded all sides, power on this planet was in fewer hands. The centers of London and Wall Street, etc., funded all sides. Power on this planet was in fewer hands than ever before. After the Second World War, it was even fewer hands on the wheels of power. And as a result of the Second World War, we had the creation of the United Nations, we had the creation of NATO, and we had this great centralization of global power. Problem, reaction, solution. This is a wonderful example. Here you've got this memorial in the center of this edifice of global power, and it says, to the immortal honor of the officers, non-commissioned officers and men of London who served their king and empire in the Great War 1914 to 1919, this memorial is dedicated in proud and grateful recognition by the City and County of London. I'm sure it is, because as a result of the sacrifice they made, power in the world came into fewer and fewer hands, not least into this area I'm talking in now, and also made a fortune, because not only does it create problem, reaction, solution, when you lend money to both sides, they then have to pay you back that money plus interest. When both sides have devastated each other's countries, they borrow more money from you so that they can rebuild their shattered countries. Therefore, power equals control of money in the world as it is today, and the control of money comes through debt, and wars create massive amounts of debt, therefore massive amounts of control. It says here, their name liveth forevermore. Total bullshit. People who are manipulated to fight wars are merely pawns in a game they don't understand. At the bottom here, it talks about the memory of those who died in the Second World War, 1939 and 1945. How ironic and how sick that that war was manipulated and funded to a large extent from this building here, the Bank of England. The governor of the Bank of England at that time was a guy called Montague Norman, a very, very close friend of Hitler's banker, and it was the Bank of England, Wall Street, and the transnational corporations which had German subsidiaries, not least the Rockefeller's Standard Oil in America. Rockefeller's another one of these bloodline families, along with the Rothschilds and others. It was those companies and banks that funded Hitler and allowed him to build a war machine that cost literally millions of lives. And before we move on and expand this story, on the other side of this square is another very appropriate statue. It's of the Duke of Wellington. The Duke of Wellington fought the Battle of Waterloo against Napoleon. And this is a wonderful example again of the way the financial markets are manipulated to this day. What happened was that the House of Rothschild was funding Wellington and also funding Napoleon. And what they did was they arranged, because communications weren't anything like they are today, of course, back then. What they did, they made sure that they knew the outcome of the war, or the Battle of Waterloo, before anyone else in this area of London did. So they found that Wellington, the Duke here, another bloody puppet, they haven't got the strings on the statue unfortunately, so it's not accurate, they realized that Wellington had won the Battle of Waterloo. What they did, however, was put the rumor out in this area that Napoleon had won the Battle of Waterloo. As a result, there was a panic, stocks fell, there was a crash. What were the Rothschilds doing quietly, secretly? They were buying up all the stock they could at those crashed prices. And then along came the real story. Wellington had won the Battle of Waterloo. As a result, the panic was over, all those stocks rose in price, and the Rothschilds were not only fantastically richer, they owned vast amounts more of the economy of this country and in a much wider area of Europe. So the manipulation of the financial markets, that's just an example from the last century, is very much going on to this day. And it's manipulating your life, what your money will buy, and indeed if you have any money at all. And I'll just finish at this location by focusing yet again on the Mansion House. Arizona Wilder, the subject of this video, conducted satanic ritual at the highest level, and we'll come to that in detail. You'll see that in the interview. But it's very much part of these bloodlines that have increasingly controlled the planet over the last few thousand years. When you follow them through from the ancient Near and Middle East up into Europe, where they became the European aristocracy and the royal families of Europe, or royal family if the truth be told, because they're just the same bloodlines under different names, over to America and into the modern world, one thing follows again and again: human sacrifice, satanic ritual, blood drinking, and all this stuff. And I've talked to a number of people who have seen these rituals in the City of London, who have been subjected to some of them. And the Mansion House, the centre of government in the City of London, is one of the key places where it goes on around here when work here is finished for the day. And satanic ritual is very much part of the next topic I want to raise and talk about at another location, and that's mind control. A few can only control billions and the direction of their lives if they manipulate the way we think and manipulate the way we feel. Only by doing that can they control us, because there's not enough to do it physically. And so mind control is the foundation of how it's done, and we'll talk about that at the center of global mind control, at the center of the network that generates it, and that's the Tavistock Institute, not far from here, yet again in London. Well, we're now just a short drive from the City of London, next to this very appropriate poster, Very Bad Things, and I'm on my way to the Tavistock Institute. It is the center of global mind control and the network that does the research and creates the data and advances the techniques to mind control people in many ways. When you think about mind control, you might think of the Manchurian candidate and some robot with a gun. Kill, 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 kill. But mind control is much bigger than that. If you take the definition of mind control to be manipulating the way people think and therefore behave, then the question is not how many people are mind controlled in the world, it's how few are not. Because every time you read a news story which is slanted to get you to see the world, a person or an event in a certain way, and you accept that slant and take it as truth, you're being mind controlled. Every time you see an advertisement and it persuades you to buy something you don't really need, you're being mind controlled. So all these different techniques are used all the time to get us to think and behave the way this few, this clique, this elite want us to. Problem, reaction, solution, getting us to react to events and demanding solutions, the solutions the elite want us to demand, that's also mind control. So mind control is a vast, vast subject. And you know, in the streets of the cities of the world, or the towns of the world, you get these people with the clipboards that are asking you questions called opinion polls. Well, we're led to believe that these opinion polls are to get a feel for what people want so that we can give the people what they want. No, no. Overwhelmingly, those opinion polls are designed to find out if the programming, the manipulation of the public opinion, of the collective consciousness, is actually working. So they'll ask your opinion on various subjects, and if 80% say, yeah, we think in this certain way about this subject, okay, the programs work, brilliant. If only 40% think that way, then the question is, the manipulators ask, what more do we have to do to get more people to think the way we want them to think? So it's all about mind control and emotional manipulation. That's how it works. And we've just reached a point here, a military establishment. The Honourable Artillery Company headquarters, SAR. What is the military? What is the training for the military except fundamental mind control? What happens when you go through the training, especially in the elite organizations like the SAS and the Parachute Regiment in this country, or the Delta Forces in the United States? It is to get human beings to give their thinking processes away to those in the peak caps that have more stars or more stripes on their arm. And you want people caps that have more stars or more stripes on their arm. And you want people in the military to so give their mind away that when someone in a peak cap says, shoot this group of people, then without saying, well, why, or what have they done to me, or whatever, it's all over. Yes, sir, yes, sir. The yes, sir mentality, mind control. And if those people had a drink with the opposition, the opponents, the enemy, they'd probably get on fine. But they don't get to that stage, because when the peak cap says shoot, they shoot. They are mind controlled. And this is what the military is about. So you have mass mind control, you have individual mind control, and I'm just going to now walk just around the corner from here and take you to the headquarters of global mind manipulation. Mind control has been known about for a very, very long time. And to understand many of the things that Arizona will be talking about in the interview, just need to explain one of the fundamental techniques of mind control. It's called trauma-based mind control. There is a mechanism in the mind that shuts out the memory of trauma. You know when you have a car accident and you can't remember what happened before, the trauma of the actual accident and immediately afterwards? That's because the mind puts an amnesic barrier around trauma. Now that's very, very good, because obviously we don't want to keep reliving and re-remembering severe trauma like accidents and horrors of that kind. But this they began to understand massively in the concentration camps of Germany under the guy known as Joseph Mengele, the angel of death, the infamous mind manipulator and geneticist. They began to understand that if you could systematically traumatize someone, particularly before the age of 5 and 6, then you could turn their mind into a honeycomb of self-contained compartments, amnesic barriers, which were unaware of the existence of the others. And if through hypnotic keys, triggers, words, signs, whatever, you could pull one of these amnesic barriers to the front to become the conscious level, that could experience something or be programmed to do something robotically, and then that compartment could be pushed back in the mind and another one pulled forward. Now this new one has no idea the other compartment exists, let alone what it's experienced or what it's been programmed to do. This has become known as multiple personality disorder, or DID, dissociative identity disorder, which is much more appropriate. And for short, these people are known as multiples. And this is some of the terms that Arizona will be using in the interview. Now we've reached a point here, if we just turn around, of the headquarters of the Global Mind Control Network. This is the Tavistock Institute in Tabernacle Street, 30 Tabernacle Street in London. It was this network, and is this network, that coordinates the mind control program around the world, both on a mass and individual level. The background to this organization is this. It used to be part of the British military psychological warfare department, appropriately. And it was developed by a guy called Dr. John Rawlings Rees. And other parts of the network were established around the world. Stanford in America is one of them. And together they coordinate the mass mind manipulation of the human race and mind program people on an individual level. Just to give you an idea, these mind control people are overwhelmingly those that do the assassinations. Why is it always a lone nutter that's responsible for assassination? So people say, oh, he was just a nutter. No conspiracy, no more investigation necessary. Why is it that the same psychological profile keeps turning up all over the world with guns, going crazy with guns in the street, killing people, creating problem, reaction, solution situations in which legislation comes through and is introduced as a result of those horrors? Interestingly, Martin Bryant, the man who went crazy with a gun in Port Arthur, Tasmania, just happened to be treated by a guy called Dr. Eric Cunningham Dax. Now, Cunningham Dax was the Tavistock Institute representative in Australia and a close associate for decades of Dr. John Rawlings Rees that sent the whole thing going. So when someone goes crazy with a gun or these horrific things happen, we need to ask the question, are they doing it from their own mind, or are they programmed to do it because of the effect of what they do? Now, Arizona Wilder was brought up from birth in these mind control programs, and her programmer was Joseph Mengele, the angel of death. And when he eventually died in the late 80s, because the subject of the programming becomes so attached to the programmer, almost worshipping the programmer, when the programmer dies, often the programming starts to break down. It did with this lady, and that's why now she's speaking out and talking in staggering detail about what she experienced and the people that she was involved with. People might find it hard to believe that Joseph Mengele was in the United States and South America after the war, but there was a British intelligence, American intelligence operation called Project Paperclip, which got people like Mengele and other leading Nazis out of Germany at the end of the war to continue their mind programming and to continue their genetic research and manipulation in America after the war, in the United Kingdom also. So this is some important background to this Arizona Wilder interview, but it's not even the biggest secret. The biggest secret is even more bizarre than that. Well, I've now come literally a few strides outside of the official boundaries of the City of London into an area known as Temple Bar, where the Royal Courts of Justice are established, and this is the centre of the British legal profession. Not just the British legal profession, but the legal profession of the world, as the biggest secret exposes. This is where they come to the bar, as it's said, to become barristers, the top of the legal profession, and eventually to become the judges that are part of the network and the secret society network overwhelmingly, who are told what to do. And when you've got judges being told what to do by the secret society network, what justice is there? Temple Bar is named after the Knights Templar, one of the secret societies in the ancient world that I talk about in my books, and they were part of this network, and their successors are continuing that manipulation and agenda to this day. Now, I'm standing across the road from the Royal Courts of Justice here, outside something called the Outer Temple. This is one of the major secret societies that manipulate and control the legal profession and the workings of so-called justice in Britain, and indeed, like I say, further afield. But the reason I've come here overwhelmingly is to point out something in the centre of the road here at the boundary between Temple Bar and the City of London. And it's a massive reptile figure, dragon figure, in the centre of the road. Now, we're getting into what the biggest secret is here, because when you go around London, and indeed looking at the coats of arms of the aristocratic families, etc., again and again you keep seeing reptiles, you keep seeing dragons, and you've got the serpent race and the dragon race constantly recurring in the ancient texts describing the gods of the ancient world. And there is a reason for this. There is a reason why dragons appear everywhere, and that is the biggest secret, which Arizona Wilder also has experienced. Right at the start of our little tour of London, in that square outside the Bank of England, it's also possible to see again this same theme that keeps reoccurring of flying dragons, of flying serpents. We've seen one major serpent figure, serpent statue, at one entrance to the City of London near the Law Courts, and here I am now alongside the River Thames at another entrance to the City of London, this epicenter of global control. And what do we have to signpost the fact that you're entering the City of London? Yet another flying dragon, this one holding the shield with the red cross and the white background, this ancient symbol that I talked about with the flag on top of the Mansion House and the flag of England, the flag of St. George. So what's going on? Why, when you look at the ancient accounts of the ancient gods, do you again and again see this reoccurring theme of the serpent race, the serpent gods, the flying serpents? Why, in my research for the biggest secret, have I come across a stream of people from different walks of life all over the world who have told me the same thing, that they have seen, to their astonishment and amazement, they've seen key people in positions of power just demanifest from being a human physical form and become before their eyes a reptile. Being a human physical form and become before their eyes a reptilian figure. When you look at the ancient gods of the Indus Valley, they talk about the Nagas, the gods who, wait for it, had the ability to manifest as human or manifest as reptiles. This is absolutely vital to understanding parts of the Arizona interview, because she has experienced exactly this. And the background to what's happening is quite simple. This three-dimensional world that we appear to live in is only one frequency, one dimension of existence. we have a frequency range which we can perceive. We call them the physical senses. But outside of that range are other frequencies, other dimensions of existence and life that are sharing the same space that we are. In the space that my body is occupying now, for instance, are all the radio and television frequencies broadcasting to London. I can't see them, they can't see each other, they're not aware of each other because they're on different frequencies. Only when the frequencies become very close do we have what we call interference on the television or interference on the radio. And it's the same with creation. We live in conscious terms in this three-dimensional world. So this is our reality, this is what we perceive. But there are other dimensions. And the one closest to this is the fourth dimension. And staggering as it may seem, and you really have to read The Biggest Secret to see the immense supporting evidence for this, a reptilian race from this fourth dimension is the source, or one of the key sources, of the manipulation of this world. Back in the ancient world, again documented endlessly in so many parts of the world, in ancient texts and legends and accounts, are the stories of how this extraterrestrial race interbred with humanity, creating hybrid bloodlines. And when you do the genealogical research, you find that it is these human-reptile hybrid bloodlines that actually have occupied the major positions of power through the history of the last few thousand years, and today are in the key positions of power, running the banking system, the business system, the politics, the military, etc. And Arizona Wilder, who had no idea of all this other information coming towards me in researching The Biggest Secret, when I met her, she said and told me about how at various satanic rituals involving the most famous people in the world, she had seen them again and again turn into reptile figures and then come back again during the ritual. I got a call from the head of an organization in America called Parents Against Ritual Abuse, who told me again from her experience how many of her clients who had been subjected to satanic ritual had reported the same story of how the participants had shape-shifted, as the term goes, from human to reptiles and back again during the ritual. And one of the key areas, one of the key families identified by Arizona Wilder in her accounts is one not too far from here, and it's very famous indeed. And that family and that bloodline live here, or at least partly live here. Buckingham Palace, one of the many palaces and homes of the British royal family, the House of Windsor. They're seen as bastions of the establishment, the British establishment, but in fact the Windsor bloodline is not British at all, it's German. It's really the House of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. And on Prince Philip's side, the husband of the Queen of England, he's a Mountbatten, which is really Battenberg. Again, another German line. In 1917, they changed the name from Battenberg to Mountbatten, from the House of Saxe-Coburg to Windsor, because at that time, you may recall, the German nation and the British nation were knocking hell out of each other in the trenches of northern France. And it was good PR from the British royal family's point of view to just change their name to sound more English. And this is just the farce and the facade behind so much, or behind which so much goes on. However, most people, if not almost everyone on the planet, would find the fact that the House of Windsor are one of these reptilian-human hybrid lines that shape-shift between human and reptilian form to be utterly, devastatingly ludicrous and unbelievable. I understand that. But the truth, the real truth, often is. And Arizona Wilder, in the interview that's coming up now, is going to talk about her experiences of seeing this happen. Well, I think that's all you need to know and appreciate to understand the kind of information that Arizona Wilder is going to reveal to us now, except one thing. Across the millennium years is crunch time in this whole agenda, crunch time for the human race. This is the time when this network of interbreeding bloodlines wants to bring in its global fascist structure of a world government to which nation states would be administrative units, of a world central bank and a world currency, a currency that wouldn't be cash, it would be merely electronic, for which there are fundamental implications for human freedom. And also the world army, which is designed to be NATO, expanding and expanding as it is now, of course, to become the fully fledged world army, world police force. And underpinning that little lot is designed to be a microchip population, in which we are microchipped with our financial details, our medical details, etc., etc. And that would allow not only electronic tagging, people knowing where we are all the time, it would allow the external manipulation through this electronic means of our mental and emotional processes. This will happen unless the human race wakes up and wakes up fast. And to do that, we need to understand what's really going on. And to let people know that, we've got to stop beating about the bush, stop pulling punches, stop pussyfooting around, keeping information from people, oh my goodness, how will they react, and just say, this is going on, take it or leave it, make of it what you will, but this is what's going on. And some of the information you're going to hear now is quite horrific, but if we don't know about it, what can we do to stop it and to change it? I spoke to Arizona Wilder in Los Angeles, and this is what she had to say.